so much for being with us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Foltz, and welcome to Foltz Fine Art.
Woo!
We're
Yay!
pleased to see everyone here this afternoon, and we're excited to present our Street Scene Vol.II, featuring Rachel Gardner's incredible installation, Whispers of the Wild, Shadows and Light. These installations we started last summer. It's our first time. Some of you know that we kind of expanded into the space next door, which gave us this beautiful window front facing Westheimer that day or night. We are inviting artists every couple months or so to change it out into these wonderful transformative streetscapes, that passersby, day or night can see these installations and really transforming the space into a place for reflection, pause, and unexpected encounter in the middle of our bustling city. But really this space, between the gallery and the street is inviting the community and passersby to come and, experience a part, having inspiration from art in their everyday life. We'll hear from Rachel more specifically about her installation and what her inspiration behind it, and moments of reflection in nature, as well as her artistic process, talking about the papier-mâché sculptures that she's using. But really, it's an incredibly intimate and expansive installation. I really encourage you to, if you haven't already had a chance to go look at it, step outside afterwards and spend some time.
Thank you.
After the talk, we'll do a brief Q&A, followed by, we're going to have a few words from Diana Roberts about the new Contemporary Texas Sculpture book, which just came out, of which Rachel is one of the artists featured in it, but it's commemorating the 15th anniversary of the Texas Sculpture Group. Incredible group of artists. This is the new book. A number of sculptors I'm seeing in the audience. Daniel Chadbourne, Sharon Capriva, among others. And afterwards, we'll have a book signing for those of you who'd like to get the book and have them signed by some of the featured artists.
Woo!
But without further ado, we'll turn it over to Rachel, and please join me in welcoming Rachel Gardner.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to sit down and get comfortable. But thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your Saturday, on this lovely Saturday, to come hear me speak about this body of work, and to also support Texas Sculpture Group and the new book release. So honored to be a part of it, the group and the book. So hopefully you will get the chance to look at the book afterwards and purchase one if you want. Get us to sign it. But I'm really honored that you guys are here. Also, thank you to the Foltz team. Feels like a family, for just being so incredibly fun and supportive with all of the art making and process. They are the best, and I'm really grateful to get to work with them. So I was going to just share a brief history about me, not too long, but just, I don't know a lot of you guys, just so you know kind of where I came from and how I got to making these crazy creatures. So I grew up in Sugar Land, Texas, right down the road. And I would say I was a creative child, but I was also a highly competitive soccer player that took most of my time and energy into college, went on to play at Tech and then Stephen F. Austin, with not knowing that I was going to go into the arts, until I kind of started taking some art classes, came pretty naturally, and I started to love it. And then I had a career-ending injury in college, and all of my love and passion for soccer started shifting towards the arts. And I ended up graduating from Stephen F. Austin State University with my BFA in arts education and painting. And I went on to teach elementary art for a couple of years, which was challenging. 500 little humans, dipping their hands in paint. And this was before I had kids, and I was exhausted, and I thought, man, I love this. This is really special to witness them so freely creating art, but I really want to teach at a higher level, and I want to pursue my own art. So I emailed this guy named Michael Collins. He's right there in the crowd. Yes, and if you don't know him, he's amazing. You should get to know him and his work. He shows here at Foltz as well. And he just kind of took me under, his wing and helped me develop my work even before I got in the program. And I studied there for 2 years and got my MFA there as well. And I got to meet people like Tiffany Bergeron, who's now the chair of our program. Hey guys. And just, be inspired by really great artists and connect to the Houston art scene. I got to meet people like Susan Budge and Sharon Capriva. I'll share more about you, Sharon, because you're part of my process in a bit. And then, from there, I started teaching at HCU, formerly HBU. And I work with grads now and undergrads and kind of teach a variety of classes depending on the semester. But I learn a lot from my students, which I see a few of them in the crowd as well. Thank you guys for coming. And it's just really a beautiful balance between creating and teaching and learning from them as well. And then I have 2 little kids. There's one right here, Jasper, raise your hand. Yeah. And then my sweet daughter, she actually has her first soccer game of the season, but she's got plenty more, so I'll get to those later. But that's where my husband and her are, and we live in the Heights. I work in the Heights. I currently am working in my garage. We made a change. We moved, and so I made that body of work that I will be speaking about in that space. But it's just, I'm just super honored to be here. And then I got to meet Foltz and start working with them, and they've just been incredible. I felt really supported and that I can explore at the same time. I don't think y'all have ever told me no, which is awesome. So once they opened up this space, was about a year ago, they mentioned what they would be doing with the window installation and kind of an ongoing installation space for their artists. And I love the idea. I love being given a space to take over and create a world, and especially in such a prominent area that so many people drive by. I'm like, even to my friends that don't want to go inside a gallery, I'm like, you can just drive by and see it, and at night's probably the best time to view it for this specific scene. But so then they approached me and asked about me installing for Street Scene Vol.II, and I was like, yes, but I was also pretty nervous to follow Duel. If you don't know his work, he's incredible. Did an amazing job in that space. They do have wonderful footage of it on their website. But I thought, my work's gonna be different, and I immediately started imagining, okay, time of year, right? What do I wanna say in a install that's going to be opening in January? And I immediately thought, I want to bring winter to Houston because we don't always get to experience that. And so I've spent quite a few winters in Park City, Utah, and there are so many scenes that have stuck with me and just, been ingrained in my mind and my soul. And I went there for the inspiration and began building these creatures from that. I knew I wanted to create a snowy, cold scene. If it was 80 degrees outside for the opening, I wanted people to feel cold but at peace inside. So that was kind of where I started, and then I just started building. And so I actually wrote a little bit about this work. Sometimes I feel like my written words are expressed better and a little more poetically than when I'm just up here talking. So I wrote a bit about it, and then I would love to get into my process and my material and my methods. There is a reason there's a tomato cage by me. So I'll get to that, but here we go. This installation begins with quiet. When light hits the snow, it sparkles and shadows fall deep against the bright white. Snow has a way of transforming the forest. It softens sound, slows movement, and holds everything in a kind of suspended stillness. When you step into a snowy landscape, you become aware of your breath and your presence. I wanted to recreate that kind of hush here, a space where the world feels slowed down. For many years, when I created my sculptures, I left their eyes hollow. That absence was intentional, sometimes for aesthetic purposes, but often it reflected our distance from the natural world, how we move through it without truly seeing, how we've grown disconnected from the living beings around us. But this body of work marks a turning point. For the first time, I gave my creatures eyes. Giving them eyes felt like giving them soul, an interior life and awareness. Because when you're out in the forest and you lock eyes with an animal, something shifts inside you. It's subtle, but it's undeniable. You realize you are not alone. You are not above. You are simply another being in a shared space. Owls especially hold that power. Their gaze feels ancient and steady, almost otherworldly. When an owl looks at you, it doesn't feel passive. It feels like recognition. I wanted the viewers to experience that moment here, not just to look at the creatures, but to feel looked back at, to feel that quiet exchange. When we're in snowy places like Utah, there's this instinct we all share. Someone spots a deer or an owl, and suddenly everyone is at the window, hushed, watching. Time slows. The outside world becomes sacred for a moment. Those animals feel like visitors, rare, fleeting, almost magical, reminding us that we are guests in their landscape. I started thinking about how different that feels from our everyday life in a busy urban environment where nature is often distant, fragmented, and framed by concrete and glass. In this installation, I was interested in flipping that perspective. Instead of us rushing to the window to look out at nature, we become the ones outside peering in. There's a quiet irony there, nature observing us while we long to reconnect with it. The window becomes a threshold, a thin boundary between stillness and noise, between the natural world and the constructed one. If the work does anything, I hope it offers a pause, a breath, a gentle reminder that we are still capable of connection with the wild, with the quiet, and with something deeper inside ourselves. I could not have said that without reading it. So thank you so much. So now I would love to share a bit about my process. I would love, Sharon, I learned this from you. She visited during my grad program. I went in as a painter, came out as a painter and a sculptor, and I did not know how I wanted to come off the canvas, but I knew I wanted to. And Hans Moltzberger and Michael Collins brought Sharon in, and she walked in with a tomato cage like this, and she did a demo. I don't remember what you created, Sharon, but I know it resonated, and I connected deeply with it. And then I built my first wolf there, and Sharon looked at me and said, I want you to build a whole room of these. And so I did that. I bought a lot of tomato cages, and I began constructing them. So now whenever I see a creature that I want to build, I see a tomato cage. I see the skeleton as a tomato cage and how I'm going to go from there. So every one of those pieces, besides the moths that are on the wall, are started with a tomato cage. So I'll show you. For example, this is my laying deer that I bent this way, then I push the hip down, and then, you know, you finagle a few things, and then I tape off, and then I build muscle and you know, the skin or feathers on top of that, okay? This, what is that the start of? Maybe something that's flying. And I cut this off, and then I connected and built a head off of that, and I had the start of an owl. So I always start with this, and that's what I see. I look at a form or a figure, and if I can't imagine a tomato cage inside of it, I probably stay away from it. But so I'm so grateful just for all the people that have influenced my life. Sharon and Susan Budge, who just showed up, she's been a big influence on me, and Michael Collins and Tiffany, and just getting to watch how they work and carry themselves, and you know, it all influences your work, whether you think about it at the time or not. You see little parts of it show up in how you do. And Danville, I study you guys, you know. So anyways, that's kind of how these started. And then I love going out into nature and pulling from them for legs or literal sticks and stuff to be a part of it. I almost always have leaves and incorporate that into my work, kind of bringing that natural world in. And I love that tension between the constructed and the organic, and I always try to remember that as I move forward. And so I build on top of that primarily with paper and tape, and then papier-mâché, which is a material that we all worked with kind of as kids. So there's something really fun about that as well. Recently I've gotten into paper clay, which is pretty special. I love it's got a lot of qualities like paper, and then a lot that are like clay. So it holds like clay, and you can tear it like paper, which are two of my favorite things. So I started incorporating those with the moths and the parts of the forms. And then I really wanted to play up the shadows, because I think shadows are so dramatic and beautiful, especially on snow. They're so much more prominent and strong. So yeah, that's my process. So, you know, I'm quite impulsive with my creating. If I have something make an impression on me, I usually make it. And then if I can put it together in a scene later, that's awesome. But I also want it to stand alone if it can. So, you know, whenever I'm making these, I picture it also by itself. I picture it inside, I picture it outside, how that might change it and change the viewer's perspective on it. I use one, and actually I failed to mention that with this specific installation as well, I wanted to make the owls so they could hang freely, so they all have hooks that they could hang from a ceiling, or they could hang on the wall. That's not part of the answer though. No, I used one, and when I've built like some of the public work I've done where I've had to go real large scale, I put a bunch of these together. I'll flip them and, you know, connect them, and sometimes I'll weld, but I try to avoid machinery. I like to just work with my hands as much, not that that's not working with your hands, but sometimes I make myself nervous when I weld. Let's be honest. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I usually like the size. This size is actually hard to find. They make tomato cages larger that they sell at like Home Depot and stuff. We have this great little hardware store in the Heights that Sharon told me about, C&D Hardware, and they sell these in the back. And they always ask me about the tomatoes I'm about to plant, and I'm like, they're like, how many plants do you have, you know? They're thriving. And so but I can walk there from my house, and they sell this size, which is pretty easy to manipulate and maneuver. But yeah, those all started with one this size, and then if I need to cut them down, I just cut pieces down and then work off of that. If I need to go larger, I can buy the larger ones, or I'll stack a few of these together. It's a good question. I mean, I think that can represent a lot, shadows and light, right? That can represent hard times and wonderful times, loss and life cycles within yourself that we all experience, you know? And so without, you know, darkness, there's no light. So I think that's inside of all of us if we've lived life, right? And so, yes, I definitely think parts of me are, I see myself in a lot of these creatures. Sometimes I'll go out there, I'm like, does that look like me? Is that my nose? So yeah, I definitely think I see myself in them a lot, and shadows and light and the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. So, gosh, I feel like I'm always working. Like I am, if I'm not drawing, I'm sculpting. If I'm not sculpting, I'm painting. And sometimes the painting informs the sculpture, and it kind of just goes back and forth. If I'm struggling with an anatomy, I go back and I draw. But sometimes I just go out there and start, like I imagine I'm drawing when I'm, you know, when I'm sculpting these. Like it feels to me kind of like a drawing when I'm doing it. But I have had times when I'm like, something's off, I can't quite figure it out, and I've ripped through this thing 300 times, you know, I better hit the drawing board. And then it does help me get through it. And sometimes I'll have an okay drawing out of it too, which is nice, you know. But yeah, I'd say I kind of go back and forth. Yeah, I think that kind of kicked off actually during my thesis work at Houston Christian University. I was talking a lot about disconnection from nature in our modern world, and we took my sculptures into this, you know, very busy business scene, and put these wolves in the middle of the lunch hour, and we captured these images of these people walking by without even noticing a wolf in their pathway. Like, come on, look up, you know. And so then I thought, you know, it's kind of like flipping the perspective again. Then we're out in Germany, which is also a part of our program at Houston Christian University. We offer a residency out in the countryside of Hilmsen, Germany, and you're limited on supplies. You really have to kind of draw from the land, pull from the land. And I created a bunch of these sculptures out there, and I wanted to put them out in nature, and kind of flip it, and see how they changed. And so I'm trying to think if anyone was with me that's here, but we gathered up, you know, some of the other residents there, and we each grabbed a wolf or a raven, and we're walking down the middle of this country road, you know, and we found this really cool crop circle. And I wish I had an image of it, but that can be for another time. And that's not in the book, no, that one's. And a storm started rolling in, and I was like, thank you, God. You know, this is such gonna be a cool scene. And so we all put the creatures down and created this scene in the middle of, you know, Hilmsen, Germany's countryside. And these creatures took on a whole different feel. You know, they felt really wild and really raw. As opposed to putting it in an office building, it felt cold, felt disconnected. This felt good. It felt, you know, like a connection was made there between the animal and the land and the human. And so I love doing that. I did take these out to Professor Knoll's land. I called him up one day because I kept trying to find pockets around Houston. Went to Memorial Park, tried to hang some owls from a tree. People were just freaking, what is this psycho? And I just couldn't find the right setting. And I'm like, I know someone that lives on some pretty cool foresty land, and I gave him and Ruby a call, and they said, of course. So I brought this scene out to their land, and that's where you'll see some of the black and white photos of them flying from the trees. And I have a lot of fun doing that. I like shocking people when I'm in the city, but it's like I'm out there just, creating and having and painting. I feel like I'm making a painting out there. And so yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I love doing that. Thank you guys.